Hi, I'm Michael King. I'm a WordPress addict. You can follow me on Twitter. Nice, easy to remember. Why would we extend WordPress? There's a very simple reasoning why. It's to add new functionality that didn't exist in WordPress to begin with, extend or improve the functionality, update existing feature sets, improve the performance, and enhance security. As Steve mentioned earlier, there's several plugins that had security problems earlier this week. There are plugins like WordFence, which is a WordPress security plugin. Somebody wrote a plugin, they extended WordPress to add security features. Firewalling built into WordPress, so you can decide that people in Czechoslovakia don't need to see your site. This way they can't hack your site. Does everybody understand why we would want to extend WordPress? All right, so let me go into the 5 ways that we can go through and extend WordPress. The first way is hacking the core. This is bad. We never hack the core. The moment you hack the core, you own WordPress. You must perpetuate that hack throughout the entire time that you run your site. If you don't think that's a problem, when I started at Reader's Digest over a year and a half ago, they had 39 core modifications. They were running WordPress 3.04. They hadn't done an upgrade in 2 years because they couldn't do one without putting those hacks back into place. And they had no idea how to do it because they paid some development company to migrate them off of what they were into WordPress and build the system like they had, but in WordPress. And that company didn't know WordPress, so they just hacked it away and gave them this bundle and said, okay, here you go, you're done. We now have 0 hacks. We're actually running 4.1.1. We've eliminated all that, got rid of all that functionality because it was ridiculous. The next way to extend WordPress, the most common way that most people know about, is with their themes. Themes add, deskin, the functionality, and 9 times out of 10 people dump code into the functions PHP file. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Anybody know what's wrong with dumping code into the functions PHP file? Any guesses? It's a troubleshooting nightmare. If you have 900 lines of code because you've added various plugin type functionality into your functions PHP file, how do you turn that off one by one to see what's broken on your site? The only things that really belong in your functions PHP file are things related to that theme needs to support itself. If there's certain type of functionality that you need to add to that theme to support your site, you put it in the functions PHP file. Otherwise, you leave that file alone. The next obvious thing most people are familiar with are plugins. How many people use the WordPress SEO plugin that Steve mentioned earlier? It's a fair amount. Anybody use all-in-one SEO? Okay. Anybody use WP Supercache? 1 or 2. W3 Total Cache? Okay. Anybody not know what a plugin does? If you want to create a custom post type, you're going to do it in a plugin. Because you can turn it on, you can turn it off. If you want to do anything with user roles and capabilities, you're going to add it in a plugin. Does anybody know what MU plugins are? By a show of hands, has anybody ever experienced an MU plugin? Okay. An MU plugin is a must-use plugin. They're generally specially designed plugins. Getting a lot of feedback. Is that annoying to everybody? Let's see if I can move this down. Let's see if that's better. Okay, so an MU plugin, you can't turn it on, you can't turn it off. You install it into the MU plugin directory manually via the command line or SFTP or FTP if that's how your site is set up. Once it's installed, WordPress automatically activates the plugin. And it keeps it active. So if you need to update this plugin, if for the sake of argument you had an MU plugin on your site that was one of those 4 or 5 that Steve mentioned earlier that had a security update, you would have to manually install that file into the MU plugins folder yourself to update that plugin. Can anybody give me an idea or guess why you would want to use an MU plugin? Anybody? If you build a custom post type, let's say you run a record store and you want to build a custom post type for records. Do you want to have that to be a plugin that you could turn on and off accidentally and then disable your entire site? Or would you want that to be always on, always active, so that if you hired an intern to come and work in the store, they're not going to shut off that custom post type and now you can't sell any records? It's a very valuable tool. Next month, when I give the sister part of this presentation, I'm going to go through MU plugins and how to actually write one. The next thing is Dropins. Anybody familiar with a drop-in? These are secret little ways that WordPress allows you to extend it. If you use W3 Total Cache or WP Super Cache, those are plugins that actually install drop-ins into the WordPress system for you. In the WP content folder, there's Advanced Cache and Object Cache. And those are two files that those two plugins will install that WordPress automatically knows to look for to load the caching system. There's also Sunrise PHP, which most of you will probably never see. It's a very specific and special pre-WordPress drop-in that loads before anything else in WordPress happens. And then there's also DB PHP, which is part of generally the HyperDB plugin, which has to be installed in the WordPress root directory. And again, it's a drop-in. The reason it's called a drop-in is because you drop it in the directory and you leave it alone. Just like MU plugins, there's nothing in there that you're supposed to change, touch, or adjust. You drop them in, it's like set it and forget it and walk away. Most of those things are for really advanced systems. And I don't think anybody here would really need to worry about something like that. That's pretty much it. That's extending WordPress in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
Besides limiting users, why else would you use a MU plugin?
Good question. For instance, at Reader's Digest, I have a base plugin, which is a base class that I use to build all my plugins for the company. So then, once that's in the MU plugins, even though that base plugin, that base class, is not instantiated, WordPress reads it, and the class is automatically available as if it was part of the core. So then when I build a plugin, I can just extend that class without having to do a check. If the base plugin class exists, it's safe to build my plugin. I don't have to worry about any of that. Yeah?
I had a case where the MU plugin came with the theme, but then I tried installing another plugin and there was a conflict. I didn't necessarily need the plugin that came with the theme, but I needed the one that I was trying to, but I couldn't because of the MU plugin. So
the only thing you can do is go in the directory and try and remove it, and then see if your theme would still work without it. But if it was bound to that particular theme and that theme needed the plugin, there's not much that you can do around it. Unfortunately, you could try changing the load order, because the MU plugins directory reads the files in alphabetical order. Any other questions? Yeah?
Do you know of any sources about drop-ins where you get more info, or like what files in WordPress for would give us workload files to subscribe?
Again, Advanced Cache, Object Cache, DB PHP, and Sunrise PHP. Those are the ones I know of off the top of my head. You would have to go through the core and look for any others. But basically, there are certain sets of files that WordPress automatically looks for on startup. And if it finds those, it just loads them automatically. That's why they're called drop-ins.
So it's not like one place that was first?
Not that I'm aware of, no, because they're each tied to very different things. Like the DB PHP is designed to extend the DB object that's part of WP Query. And that's how HyperDB works. HyperDB is a drop-in, as I mentioned before, that allows you to have clustered MySQL databases. So you can have multiple database servers and distribute the load across them evenly if you have a large installation. And then you can load balance across the database servers. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks, everyone.